Greetings. Here in Washington State, the site of an old mining ghost town called Copper City. There's not much left. It operated from about 1900 to apparently 1942. They were after copper and gold and that sort of thing. These beautiful mountains up here. That kind of goes with the history of a lot of the West. Extensive mining history going back, 170 years now. The 1849 gold rush in California, Oregon Trail in full swing. People were filling up these hills and these mountains, trying to find their fortune and find their riches. And here, it's one of those places. And it was a long way to come in here and come back out. They had to build all these giant timbers and bring all sorts of materials in, like roofing and nails. Look at giant nails. And what's kind of interesting is even just here, you can see some sort of greenishness on the rock. That should be copper. And you can see right there, copper is one of those metals that is ready to go right out of the ground. You don't really have to melt it down. If you can find it in pure form, essentially, or maybe you just need to sort of beat it into shape. You can find just straight lumps of it, and it oxidizes that really pretty green. And another remnant of history just sitting right here too, as some of you may know, the pull tab. Yeah, they don't make those anymore, or if they do, they're retro. That's what the top of a beer can used to look like. There's a little pull tab that you peeled off of there. We're gonna take a little trip here down whatever this used to be and see what we can see. It's amazing how much work goes into all this sort of stuff. Excuse us. Huge structures and flumes they'd have to make. Every single one of these pieces of metal or wood had to all either be made here or brought here. You can see this is really beautiful, little wooden sort of spillway. I don't know what this was all for. Let's keep on trucking down here. One of the things they do caution you about coming here is that because of the mining activity, the ground is contaminated with cadmium and arsenic. So don't touch anything. And if you do touch anything, wash your hands immediately afterwards, or whatever touched it. And it's interesting, they say don't touch the ore, but because it could be contaminated, and yet you keep finding little pieces like this, with some ants, where it's pretty clear that people were poking around trying to find a little bit of copper from Copper City. It's amazing. Maybe this was like a trestle of some kind. You can see these flat boards, just still, the massive bolts. These were, for bearing weight. These are meant to hold together. These aren't small. And there's giant concrete footing here. These piers, you can see metal cable, big heavy metal cable still here. These huge piers. Lots of people come up here. There's all sorts of footprints, and you may have noticed the beer bottle, a modern beer bottle, just over there where we were looking at the copper. That's interesting. It's hard to say what this was, not knowing much about it. Unfortunately, there's no cell service here, so if we get any information for you after the fact, we'll put it in the description. But wow, it's hard to say what's off in the trees too, just up the road as you continue on up the road towards the actual mine themselves, the mines themselves. The mine portals, there's another really big wooden bridge with these giant beams that's looks like it's meant to bear some weight, and it's not something that you just throw up when you need a temporary road. That was meant to be sturdy. Some more giant cables and shackles and stuff all laying around. It's hard to say what's underneath this pile here of stuff. You can see where we just came from up there. There was a big structure here for sure. There's definitely a questionable sort of sheen to this water. Oil slicky. Yeah. Do not touch. But there's a lot of sort of so-called ghost towns. Let's go over and check out the old mill building out in the west, and there's one we passed through over the weekend called Shaniko, and there's still people living there. It's not really a ghost town, but they still have their sort of ghost town days. Ooh, pardon the wind. Looking up across Nelson Ridge, out towards, hopefully, Mount Aches, if we can get up there. Definitely share a video from there, whether or not there's ants. And there's some fire rings around here and trash. People come up here. You can four-wheel drive up to here if you want, but it's much easier to hike the quarter mile up the old road. I'll just pop right over here. There is an informational sign for you if you're wanting to know a little more, but it says pretty much everything we've already told you. A little more details about how they know it's contaminated, and you can sort of see these bench. There used to be another big structure coming down here to the remnants of the old mill. We'll just take a quick peek here and wrap it up before we go see if we can't find ourselves a dispersed campsite. And it's interesting, these old metal buildings with shake. It's all very practical, but it's a big, heavy building. Obviously, they were processing heavy things like rock and ore. It's always fascinating to see how they did things. So this is how they decided to do this sort of eave right here with these big, heavy blocks just nailed right in, and shingles on the side. It's pretty well collapsed in. You can see some metal there. There might have been a chimney coming through there. Keep it warm. It certainly gets buried with snow and very, very cold here in the Washington Cascades. It's not a small structure here. There's an easier way around the back. We'll look around the back side, move on. Here we have the Copper City Mill. You can see what it used to be there, and all that's left now. Not sure which building this was. We assume this was that one on the left there. This is because the hill sort of goes up and you can see the bench, and then another one. There's some old timbers up there. You can walk around and observe the graffiti people have carved in. See all the remnants. You see those round holes that may have been, stovepipes, or who knows what they needed those for. There's divots everywhere with stuff in them and junk, and a lot of times they would just dig a hole and use it for a dump. And that's pretty much the way it's been across everywhere forever. Every farm you can think of out there, every ranch, they've all got a dump. They put whatever they want in it. Big building. It's just falling away, though. It's more of the roofing laying there. Gosh, it's almost like, someone dropped a house on my sister. Crazy fun house here. Can't deliver it out. I love seeing the heavy-duty cribbing there in that corner. That's how they built stuff back then. It wasn't gonna come apart, and you see this whole roof is collapsed. That peak there all warped around, and yet this corner still square, sturdy, holding up. They really knew how to build stuff. Amazing. You can see another sort of divot. And if a tree falls over, it'll leave a divot too, and that's kind of helpful. But one last little interesting thing that we've seen at old homesteads and old historic sites all over the place, when they left, they took only what was practical to take with them. When they moved on from here, they took all the equipment that was necessary. But all over the place, we find these cast iron, heavy-duty wood stoves, wood ovens, basically, from way back in the day. And you'll find these out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing else left, maybe a rock foundation of the old homestead house and the stove, and of course a well and, something like that. It's really neat to think what do they bake in here? What do they make? What do they cook? Loaves of bread. They cook up steaks. Do they have a cook or a chef or somebody that whipped up something good for them when they were hungry after a day at the mine, or maybe made something special for your birthday? Like, who knows? Maybe they had cake. Wow. But now it's here among the cedars and pines and fir is just kind of rusting away, like the rest of this town, and like a lot of interesting history here across the West. Old mining towns, old mining claims, old mining roads, old mines. I think it's time to get on out of here. Thanks for joining us for a good long 10 minutes of wandering around here looking at Copper City here in the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest in Washington. Oh, there's a pair of little chipmunk friends there saying goodbye. What's up, fellas? Oh, that's too cute. Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining us here, the old ghost town of Copper City in Washington, to take a look at some interesting history, learn about how they did things back in the day, and hang out with, as you saw earlier, ants. Oh, yes, these ants. The Copper City mill ants, apparently. What's up, fellas? Here's a few of them.